I first met Chinua Achebe, I think it was 2007, 2006, 2007, around the time of the celebrations of 50 years of his great novel, Things Fall Apart. I was teaching at Union College at the time, and I'd been invited to Bard College. And of course I was very, very intimidated by the idea, but, and almost my whole life, Chinua Achebe was a certain kind of iconic figure. And so when we went and it turned out that we were supposed to be on stage together, I remember I did a reading and then we came and sat from How to Write About Africa, an essay I'd written, and he whispered to me on the side and he was like, oh, that was excellent. And that kind of broke the ice. So I can't remember who the moderator was asking these questions about Things Fall Apart, and he turned and he had this very gentle but firm way about him, and he said, I've been talking about Things Fall Apart for 50 years. I don't have anything new to say, really. Thank you for celebrating the book, but why don't you ask this young man the questions that you want to ask? And so it was that, let's call it a certain kind of grace. I always said, the idea of a big man or a big person, in the sense of somebody who, occupies so much space in the public domain in a certain way, is often, in the language of these days, used for somebody to push their thing, to push their name, to be around, to maximize his potential, in that sort of language. And the sense I got was that he actually understood a lot more that power is grace. You get more by a certain kind of giving way, by allowing. You can feel it in his work too. You can feel it in Things Fall Apart. I was hired as the director of the Chinua Achebe Center at college. Again, was quite nervous. And so we used to visit his house quite a lot. And it was just everything, kind of the simplicity of his lifestyle. I couldn't see anywhere in his house or home any trophies or tributes to himself. This wasn't a place in which his public place in the world was displayed, right? It was a simple bungalow, a simple home, a simple family home, where you had tea and excellent conversations. There was something very powerful he was saying, an extremely strong anti-colonial position all the time, but there was always grace. There was never kind of a feeling of this sort of angry dogma, that he wants to put upon the world. It was always kind of a response by wisdom. I'll miss him. I'll miss him a lot. I'll miss that long chats having in his house, where he listened more than he talked, which was a lesson. And one day, the one thing I'll never forget him telling me was how, two things actually. One, the CNN had been doing some kind of 1 hour show on him, and that the woman kept calling, wanting footage from him of his past days. And I went to ask him, and he said, I don't have any of that, we lost everything. I'm not sure whether he was referring to after Biafra or when, but there's a certain kind of sadness too about him, of some betrayed dreams of a nation, being these young people who are at the forefront of making that nation, the terrible falling of that nation during the Biafra War, the different positions taken, the failure of the Nigerian state to find a certain kind of moral center. These were kind of sadnesses that were very manifest in him when you saw him. And the second thing, he said, I don't know why we were just talking, he just sort of wistfully, he said, it just seems as if one day we woke up, and everybody you knew was dead or had disappeared. So I was trying to I mean, he was making a kind of a political statement, and I think he was talking about the late 60s, early 70s, that sort of terrible turn when there are assassinations and the wars, this sort of end of optimism season, and a certain period too that you could feel he never fully recovered from, and the scale at which. And I think at the time I'd been talking to him sort of very optimistically about the future of Africa in my usual way. And it wasn't that he was a pessimist in a certain sense, but there was just this sense of don't underestimate the forces that govern this world and what they're prepared to do to keep power. I felt that's what I took from him.